5 years ago, I became pregnant with William's child. With this child, I married into the Chan family and became his legitimate wife. In these 5 years, William Chan completely ignored both me and the child, showing extreme indifference. 3 days ago, I and his child tragically passed away in a car accident. He went to Sili with his true love to fulfill the promises they made when they were young. On the 3rd day after Tony's death, William still hadn't shown up. Chapter 1. The people in the morning hall came in waves, each wearing a face full of sorrow and regret, but only I knew that all of it was fake. Standing in the dining room, I poured a glass of water, ready to drink, when I overheard women gossiping and laughing behind me. The child has been dead for several days, yet his father still hasn't returned? Don't you know? Know what? The voice dropped to a whisper, barely audible. William went to the Sili snow mountain with Celine. In places like that, there's no signal. The Chan family has been calling him, nearly going crazy, but he hasn't answered a single call. Maybe he's purposely ignoring them. The woman spoke with a sly smile. Who doesn't know she got into the door because she was pregnant before marriage? If it weren't for her, William would have been with Celine already. Amid these noises, I finally fainted from overwhelming sadness and collapsed at the morning hall. When I woke up after being given some medicine, the sounds around me still persisted. My head throbbed with pain. I turned over, burying my face in the pillow, trying to escape reality. The damp, salty scent filled my nostrils. It was the tears I had shed these past few days. My tears had soaked through the pillow. Yet William still hadn't returned. The noise quieted down with the sound of heavy footsteps approaching. Someone in the crowd seemed to say, "William, you're finally back. William." William? No, it can't be. He was in Sili, with Celine. How could he be back? Even if he wanted to come back, would Celine let him? She deliberately chose Tony's birthday to take William on a flight abroad. That night, Tony hung his head. The candles on the cake were about to burn out, and their light reflected on his chubby face, showing his disappointment. He was a child who loved sweets so much, but he didn't touch the cake. His childish voice asked, "Mom, when will Dad come back?" He didn't cry or throw a tantrum. From a young age, he was sensible, knowing that his dad didn't love him, nor did he love his mother. In these 5 years, Tony's only wish was for his father to spend his birthday with him. But until his death, that wish was never fulfilled. The chair beside me was pulled out, and someone sat down. The scent, this was the person I had shared a bed with for 5 years. Just by his proximity, his breath, his movements, or even a glance, I could feel him. In the past, I eagerly awaited his closeness. But now, after losing hope, I didn't even want to look at him. After sitting down, William simply said one word, flatly, "Sorry." More apologies. When she went to Sili with Celine, I blocked his way and grabbed his sleeve, begging, "Can you go tomorrow? Today is Tony's 5th birthday. He wants his dad to be with him." We had been married for so many years, and I knew I had no right to ask anything from him. After all, this marriage wasn't what he wanted. But when it came to Tony, I always wanted to ask for something. But as expected, William pushed my hand away, his face expressionless. "Sorry, Celine is waiting for me." But his child was waiting for him too. However, this time, Tony was truly angry and would never wait for him again. The coldness enveloped me. I curled my body and buried my head deeply in the pillow. William sat beside me. He knew I was awake. He was always so sensitive and suspicious, knowing every detail of my actions over these years. He feared I might try to manipulate him again or hurt the woman he loved. "Are you awake?" William's voice was calm, without sadness, only urgency. "The people downstairs have already left. Get up and eat something." How could he be so calm? As if the child who died wasn't his? Indeed, all these years, William never treated Tony as his child, nor did he treat me as his wife. After all, if it weren't for my mother's scheming, I would never have made it to William's bed or become Mrs. Chan. William hated me, hated my mother. He once called us scorpions and frogs. Thinking about Tony, I felt another wave of sadness rise in my chest. I buried my face into the damp, soft pillow, my voice hoarse, blending together in sobs. "Did you see Tony?" That's good. I tried to control my crying. You can go now. William's voice was like a gentle breeze. As nonchalant as ever, I didn't get any calls. The communication devices failed once I entered the mountains. Really? Really? Was that an emphasis or an attempt to absolve himself? I didn't care anymore. Just go. But William didn't leave. He was clearly dissatisfied with my attitude. Rosie, the child is only a few years old. How could you let him go out alone? I'm his father, and I think you should explain yourself. Explain? Heh. I let out a quiet laugh, then stretched my limbs and sat up. I must have looked terrible. My face streaked with tears, skin marked with indentations, my eye sockets deeply hollowed, eyes empty, and my complexion deathly pale. From a distance, I probably looked like a skeleton. In contrast, William sat upright, dressed in formal attire, immaculate and disciplined. His face was as cold as ice, devoid of sadness or tears. He was the interrogator, and I, the mother, had become the criminal. What are you laughing at? William furrowed his brow and asked. I'm laughing at you. I leaned against the headboard, fragile as paper, easily torn, but still sharp in my words. Do you know where Tony wanted to go? William looked at me, signaling for me to continue. He wanted to find you. He called you many times, but not once did you pick up. He said that maybe his dad was lost and couldn't find his way home, so he needed to go find you. William hesitated for a moment. Didn't you stop him? I could have lied to him once, maybe twice, but he was worried about you. While suddenly, I felt how pitiful and laughable I was. Why was I even explaining this to him? I stopped, took a deep breath, and said, It's my fault. Those few words stirred up a storm in the cold space. William's gaze became more intense, as if he was scrutinizing me. I met his gaze, speaking slowly, word by word. My mistake was being foolish enough to fall in love with you. It was a mistake to marry you and have Tony. The biggest mistake was giving birth to him, letting him suffer, and not protecting him properly. Under William's oppressive stare, I managed to smile. The biggest mistake was having any hope in you, being delusional enough to think that we could go back to the way we were. William's face remained blank, speechless for a moment. When the slap came down, neither William nor I had time to react. The person who rushed in from the door was crying, screaming in anger, and after hitting me, she grabbed my shoulders. You couldn't even keep an eye on a child. Do you even deserve to be a mother? The person who hit me was William's sister-in-law. She was arrogant and domineering, always looking down on me, and she especially disliked Tony. She had pushed Tony before, fed him rotten peaches, and whispered to him that his father hated him. Her dramatic crying now was nothing more than a performance for William. I sat there numbly, having taken several slaps, blood trickling from the corner of my mouth. William, my husband, watched indifferently, motionless, his eyes full of apathy. From the past to the present, whenever Tony and I needed help the most, he had never reached out. My hair was being yanked, and the pain was excruciating. Amidst the curses, I met William's cold. Once, when I simply tripped and scraped my skin, he would have been frantic, frowning and asking over and over if it hurt. Times had changed. Now, I was being beaten in front of him, and he could remain a passive observer. Over the years, my feelings for William had transformed from youthful infatuation to a careful, obsessive love after he became cold and distant. And finally, through manipulation and prompting, I ended up marrying him and becoming his wife. In the past, I had love for him, expectations, and guilt, but all the tension that had built up in me over the past days snapped. Suddenly, I sat up, grabbed my sister-in-law's arm, and slapped her back. She was stunned, holding her face, her eyes wide with disbelief. In this house, aside from William, I had wronged no one, and Tony certainly hadn't. This slap, I owed it to her. Chapter 2. The day we went to the cemetery, I had bruises that hadn't fully healed, my left cheek swollen, and my chin marked with scratches. If William hadn't stepped in to separate me from my sister-in-law, the injuries might have been worse. But the person William pushed away was me. Sitting in the car, the cold front hit me from all directions. but I couldn't feel the cold. I stared blankly out of the window. William sat beside me, answering a call. It was from Celine. On the day Tony was being buried. As his father, he had to answer a call from another woman. His tone was as laid back as usual, but he showed a special kind of patience with Celine. Yes. Still a few more days of work. You can go ahead. She? I turned slightly, feeling William's gaze on me. He then handed me the phone. Celine wants to talk to you. In the past, I would have probably thrown the phone out. But now, without Tony, what was the point of doing that? Under William's surprised gaze, I smiled and answered the phone. Holding it to my ear, the screen still held the warmth of William's touch. In the past, I longed for him, his scent, his voice, his warmth. I wanted to be close to him. But now, even touching the phone felt disgusting. Celine's voice came through the speaker, as cheerful and gracious as ever. Rosie, how are you? I stayed silent. The air around me felt suffocating, as if William would immediately throw me out of the car if I dared say anything harsh to Celine. William had done that before. It was a snowy night, and I had simply spoken to Celine in front of him, warning her not to destroy another family. That had sent William into a rage, smashing the phone and driving me out. That night, I walked alone in the freezing cold for 2 hours. I later had a fever for a week, but he never came to check on me. It was Tony who stayed by my bed, his little hands pressing against my forehead, calling out mommy over and over. I survived for Tony. What would have become of that child if I weren't here? How would he have stood in the Chan family? But now, it was me who had lost him, and the life within me was slowly draining away, leaving me without the will to survive. In my ears, Celine's voice repeated, Rosie, are you okay now that you've lost your child? Her tone was soft, almost whispering, as if to make sure William wouldn't hear. You must be in so much pain because you lost your leverage. Tony was indeed my leverage for marrying William. Without this child, I couldn't enter the Chan family's door. But now that I had lost him, what was left for me in the Chan family? This was never where I wanted to be. Never from the start. I cleared my sore throat. Then I'll give him back to you. Celine was stunned. What? I'll give him back to you. I realized my mistake. I shouldn't have said it that way. Sorry. He was always yours. The phone was snatched away in an instant. William hung up the call, his face twisted with disbelief and hostility. What nonsense are you talking with Celine again? What could a mother, who had lost her child, say to her husband's mistress? There were no more warnings, no more curses, just letting go. Letting go. So the lovers could finally be together. I had no more strength to hold on to this relationship, and I didn't even want to hold on to this life anymore. Under the light drizzle, Tony was laid to rest. The photo on the tombstone was taken when he was 3 years old. At that time, we had planned a family photo. Tony and I arrived early, waiting from morning until evening. Around us were happy families, talking and laughing, posing for the photographer. In the midst of their joy, Tony and I seemed laughable. I could still endure William's indifference. But what about Tony? The gloomy weather, the cold tombstone, and the photo on it, there were no smiles. Because that day, Tony had forced a smile for the photo. He didn't want me to be unhappy. Someone held an umbrella beside me. I bowed my head, praying and repenting before Tony's grave, hoping that in his next life, he could have parents who truly loved him, not suffering the coldness he faced in this life. Raindrops passed before me, and someone walked by. It seemed to be William. I struggled to open my heavy eyelids and saw his black coat brush past, a shadow sweeping by. He bent down and placed something at Tony's grave. Only when he stood up did I see clearly. It was a set of race car building blocks. A chill ran down my spine, and I felt confused. I immediately grabbed William's sleeve. He, afraid I might go mad in front of so many relatives, whispered, "Whatever you have to say. Let's talk when we get home." "What's that?" I asked calmly. William glanced back. "It's Tony's birthday gift. He asked me for it before. He didn't get it in time." "He asked you for it?" "We had an agreement." Startled by the despair on my face, William grabbed my wrist. "What's wrong?" My legs gave way, and I collapsed to my knees in front of Tony's grave. My child, on his last birthday, He clearly received a fake gift. Yet he still smiled and accepted it. Tony must have known that the watch was something I bought. But I told him it was from his dad. He accepted it willingly and even smiled, saying he wanted to thank his dad. He knew everything. He knew that for all these years, his father never loved him, that he hadn't even prepared a single birthday gift for him. Only after he had passed did he receive a long overdue gift. But what was the point of it all? Chapter 3. The atmosphere at home was heavy. William's father was waiting for him, holding a cane in his hand, his thick brows furrowed. But his tone towards me was soft. "Rosie, you go upstairs first." I knew William's father was going to take action against him again. William Chan's father was the only person in this house who liked me, trusted me, and supported me in marrying in. It was because my father had saved him in a critical moment. After my father's passing, the pillar of our family collapsed. And in gratitude, the Chan family gave my mother a position as a maid. The work was light, and the salary was very high. Chan's father then arranged for me to attend the same school as William, urging him to take care of me, treat me like his little sister. William did indeed do so, but I, unaware of the consequences, fell in love with him. When Chan's father found out that William was late for Tony's funeral, he sent the others away and was preparing to discipline him. The maid rushed up to call me to intercede, shouting desperately, dragging me along. "The sir has always liked you the most. You go say a few good words for him. Please, hurry up." Why should I go? In the past, I loved William deeply, wholeheartedly. When he was hurt or scolded, I felt worse than he did, but that was all based on my love for him. Later, I watched him run around for Celine day and night. The love faded, and shame and guilt overwhelmed me. How many times did I want to leave with Tony? And how many times did Chan's father look at me with his weathered eyes, pleading for me to stay, telling me to stay for Tony, for my mother's last wish? I should never have agreed. I took off the Chan family matron's attire and wore the simplest clothes. Not a single item in my suitcase was mine. Everything belonged to Tony. I took off my earrings and placed them under the vanity, making sure I wasn't taking anything that didn't belong to me. When I was sure, I let out a breath from deep inside me, feeling a sense of release. I avoided the maid and went downstairs. By the time I reached downstairs, William had already been punished. He was kneeling on the floor, his palms pressed against the ground, gritting his teeth in pain. When he looked up, his eyes were red and met mine, but I didn't spare him a second glance. Chan's father came over after throwing down his cane. He was the person I respected the most in this house. He provided me and my mother with a good environment and education, giving us a place to live. Even at this point, I was still grateful to him. "Uncle." I addressed him as uncle, not father. I still remembered the day I first entered the Chan house. Chan's father held my hand and placed it on William's, advising him earnestly, "Rosie is a good girl. You take good care of her." It was just like that day when my mom and I first came to the Chan house, and he introduced me to William in the same way. "Rosie will be your sister from now on. You'll go to school together. Take good care of her." The difference was that William, as a young man, could still smile at me, take care of me at school, take me to the cafeteria, wait for me after class, and even drag me to watch him play basketball. Those girls outside the court who liked him would form a crowd, but he would always insist that I go with him. He was so outstanding, so radiant, the center of attention wherever he went. I, on the other hand, was painfully ordinary when I was by his side. I always kept my head down, wore simple clothes, tied my hair in a ponytail, and wore a school uniform that could last forever. I didn't dare look him in the eye when I spoke. Always shy and introverted, not likable. Back then, everyone at school knew that William liked being around me because his father owed my father a life. He was kind, didn't mind my awkwardness or clumsiness, and took me everywhere. But when Celine appeared, that balance was shattered. Outside the court, the person watching William play basketball became her. The one eating with William in the cafeteria every meal was also her. I couldn't remember when or how she quietly crept into William's life. All I remember is that at first, I didn't realize anything. It was William's inexplicable indifference and a comment I overheard from a classmate in the bathroom. "Rosie is so oblivious. William's dating Celine now, and she's still following him around like a third wheel." Third wheel. Dating. Those words made me keep my distance from William. From then on, I wisely avoided him, coming up with excuses to refuse having meals or going to school with him. I even avoided meeting him at home. But when I appeared in the cafeteria with a male classmate, he came over. He stood by the table, looking down at me with his typical condescending gaze, as if I were a commoner. Not eating with me? So, you're dating now? I didn't understand. I just didn't want to be a third wheel anymore. But later, by some twist of fate, I broke up Celine and William's fairy tale romance. It was time to return that place to Celine. William, who had been kneeling, stood up. The 2 slaps had barely hurt him. He looked at me, and I met Chan's father's gaze. Uncle, I've left everything that should stay in the bedroom. I'll be leaving today. Rosie. I had already informed Chan's father a few days ago that I was leaving and getting a divorce. He didn't agree and tried to persuade me to stay, just like he had done in the past. But he also knew that without Tony, I wouldn't stay in this prison built by my mother. William, like an outsider, couldn't understand the conversation between Chan's father and me. Leave? Where are you going? His words angered Chan's father. You animal. Shut up. William frowned, his gaze so complicated that I couldn't make sense of it. Rosie is my wife. I have the right to ask where she's going, don't I? So, he knew I was his wife, but I guess I was never truly recognized as one. Chan's father was so angry that he clutched his chest, his face pale. I rushed over to support him, softly comforting him. Uncle, please don't be so upset. Rosie, Chan's father deeply regretted the collapse of my marriage to William. He knew the problem was with William, so he didn't blame me. This is my fault. I didn't teach this animal well. I've wronged you. And Tony. Your mother would have blamed me if she knew. Uncle, please don't say that. I helped him sit down and met William's probing gaze. Uncle is in poor health. You need to take better care of him. Without the sadness and tears from earlier, my calm demeanor made the situation even more tragic. As I passed William, he grabbed my wrist. Clarify. Where are you going? Why are you leaving? The greatest sorrow is when your heart dies. A truth William didn't understand. No longer attached to him, I didn't look at him again and forcefully pulled my wrist free. The 3rd day after leaving the Chan family, I collapsed and lost consciousness at home. I had expected this. Stomach cancer. I had been diagnosed with it 2 months ago. When Tony was still around, I had been actively cooperating with treatment, and I had told William about it the day I received the diagnosis. But all I got in response was his cold indifference. He had hated me for so long. I woke up too late. I had planned to recover from the illness and take Tony away from the Chan family. Now, it seemed, I was going to find Tony. What I didn't say that day was that Tony had run out to find William because I had fainted from the pain. A 5-year-old child, not knowing to call an ambulance, only thought of finding his dad first. In all the twists and turns, I never imagined that at the end of my life, the one I would see when I opened my eyes would be Mason. Mason was in the same class as me back in school. His family wasn't well off, but he was very good at his studies, throwing himself entirely into learning. He was the opposite of William, who was high above everyone with a privileged background. In the past, William told me that he was pretending to be high and mighty and asked me to stay away from him. I defended him, but William called me ungrateful. I knew he wanted to be a doctor, and I knew he would succeed, but I never expected that I would become his first patient after his return from studying abroad. The sight of him standing by my bedside in a white coat was so imposing, highlighting my disarray and misery. It reminded me of the times in class when he would look at me with disdain and say, "Rosie, how can you sleep so soundly when you did so poorly on the exam?" Back then, I would always furrow my brows and say, "William will take me abroad to study. He says I don't need to study so hard." Whenever I said this, Mason's expression would always be complicated. Now, looking back, I finally understand what he was thinking. Relying on someone who doesn't love you always ends in misery. And here I am, a living example of that. But no matter what, Dr. Mason saved my life. I lifted my hand, still connected to N4, and slowly curled my stiff fingers, offering him a faint smile. "Hi, Dr. Mason seemed not to want to engage with me, so he sent a nurse to take care of me instead. I had been brought in by a neighbor. The medical fees hadn't been paid yet, and the nurse asked for a family contact. I smiled cheerfully and said, "I have no father, no mother, no family." The nurse was filled with sympathy, and her hand became gentler as she removed the needle. Dr. Mason said you need to have an X-ray and a full checkup. I weakly put on my old coat. When I left the Chan family, I didn't take anything with me. After all, those things weren't mine. I was afraid William would come and demand them back. I really didn't want to see that man again. The coat was years old, not warm at all, and the cuffs were covered with fuzz. It wasn't very pleasant to look at, but I pulled my hand inside and stood up. No need. I just fainted from exhaustion. I'm perfectly fine. At the Chan family, no one respected me except for Uncle Chan. They all knew I was living off them, having schemed my way into William's bed to become Mrs. Chan. As a result, I hadn't enjoyed the privileges of being the Chan matron or the love of my husband. I had lived more like a maid than his wife. Psychologically and physically, I had become tough as iron. The nurse was doubtful, as my complexion was far worse than the seriously ill patient in the next room. Of course, I was in the late stages of stomach cancer, but that was a secret. When Tony was alive, he needed me to protect him. I secretly visited many hospitals, looking for treatment options. I would writhe in pain, vomiting uncontrollably. I took the payment slip and went to the window to pay. I pressed my hand against my abdomen and struggled to walk out of the payment line. My vision blurred, and I thought I saw William. He was wearing the coat I had bought for him, holding another woman in his arms. At that moment, I wished my consciousness would blur even further, so I wouldn't see the scarf around Celine's neck, the one I had knitted for William. After he took it, I had asked many times, "Where is the scarf?" He had only said he forgot. It turned out he had given it to Celine. He could have thrown it away, but instead, he chose to humiliate me in this way. I wasn't surprised. In fact, I felt a strange calm. Perhaps it was in that moment that William exhausted all my love and guilt for him. And with Tony's death, it was all buried. The dream of a golden life shattered. I lost my son in my marriage, had nothing left, and he was with someone new, achieving his desires. Amid the bustling hospital, I thought about the many times over the years when I gave William ties, only for Celine to take them and use them as cleaning cloths. On the anniversary of his mother's death, I waited up until midnight, only to see on Celine's social media, "You're always so heart-wrenching." Even the scarf I had carefully knitted was worn around Celine's neck. It was something my mother had taught me, my first knitting project. When I gave it to William, I nervously hoped for a smile from him, but I never got one. He only took it and said, "Next time, don't waste your effort." He was trying to tell me that no matter how hard I tried, it was all in vain. But all I wanted was to make up for it, to be a good wife. And at that time, it was Tony, standing beside me, pulling at my clothes to comfort me. He said, "Mom, don't be sad. Daddy's just stubborn. Silly child. If it's someone you love, how could you be stubborn with them?" He was never stubborn with Celine. Chapter 4. Half a month after Tony's death, I started surviving on painkillers. The passing of time made the pain worse, and I couldn't endure it, so I relied on the painkillers to cope. Every time I vomited, I felt like an empty shell, with my stomach and body completely drained. Eventually, even drinking a glass of water would cause pain. I had to take a lot of painkillers. Only by holding Tony's favorite teddy bear could I sleep. In my dazed state, I often wondered, when Tony passed away, was he in this much pain? He didn't have painkillers to take. He must have been in agony when he left. It was my fault. I didn't take care of him properly. My Tony. Before my consciousness faded, I heard a knock on the door, one after another. If it weren't for the lingering pain, I would have mistaken it for the sound of a death knell. Standing at the door was Dr. Mason, and his presence only made my expression uglier. He had never been this persistent before. When I asked him for help with questions, he would ignore me, indifferent to the point of being cold. So why was he acting like this now? "Rosie, your condition is very bad. You should go to the hospital for a checkup as soon as possible." He was a doctor. A good one at that. He could tell at a glance how serious my condition was. Mason hadn't changed much in appearance compared to the past. He had grown up, his features more pronounced, and there was a stronger air of arrogance in his expression. As William had said, he was proud. People like him couldn't tolerate insults. I really didn't want to offend anyone before I died, but I couldn't help it. Mason, don't you have any other patience? I tried to play the part of a bitter woman. The more tests I take, the more commission you'll get, right? Mason's eyelids flickered. Rosie, I'll give you money. Just stop bothering me. With that, I walked into the room, grabbed some money, and shoved it toward him. Is this enough? Dr. Mason left. Of course. Who would indulge a capricious patient? The best outcome for me was to die alone and be forgotten. I swallowed the pills, pulled the curtains, and was about to rest when I caught sight of two figures outside the window. It was Mason and William. How did he find me here? Shouldn't he be with Celine right now? They were arguing, and it looked like it was about to get physical. Ignoring the pain in my body, I rushed downstairs, without thinking, stood between them, and fought to hold back the tears and nausea. I weakly raised my head and spoke. What are you doing here? William looked the same as always, standing in the evening breeze, the hem of his coat fluttering slightly with the wind. The moonlight fell on his chiseled features, casting a cold, distant glow on him. His eyes, filled with aggression and hostility, locked onto Mason. Just like back in school, he would get angry whenever he saw Mason use my things or fetch water for me. Then, he asked me, Rosie, don't you have hands? Why do you need someone else to help you? He wouldn't allow another man to help me, but he would reserve all his kindness for Celine. In the past, I loved him, and to be with him, I distanced myself from many people. But now, I just wanted to follow my own heart. I stepped in front of Mason, turning to pull his sleeve, urging him to leave quickly. He and William exchanged a silent, fiery stare. Without my request, he wouldn't have left like this. William saw this and a storm of cold fury brewed on his face. He sneered and asked, You're abandoning a good life at home to come here? So you're with your lover now? A good life? So, to William, being ignored by your husband, despised by everyone, and losing your child was considered a good life. After marriage, he hated me and humiliated me. I could understand. After all, I had destroyed his perfect match with Celine. But now, I'm about to die. He shouldn't be here. I don't want this good life anymore. You can leave it for Celine. I wish you both a lifetime of happiness and many descendants. I said it calmly, without hysteria or collapse. It was as simple as the day I left the Chan family. As though I was saying, I won't be eating the next meal here. A flicker of surprise crossed William's pupils. After all these days, perhaps he thought my decision to divorce was a momentary impulse due to Tony's death. I had suggested leaving before, but every time it had come to nothing. His suspicion was understandable. Rosie, have you thought this through? This was the most resolute decision I had made, and it wouldn't change. If I leave, isn't it what you've wanted all these years? After a brief silence, William nodded, a mocking smile curling on his lips. You're the one saying this. If you regret it in the future, don't come begging me. Watching his back as he walked away, I couldn't help but ask myself, do I even have a future? That night, I came across a new tweet from Celine. The wish has come true. The picture was of a brand new diamond ring on her finger. Chapter 5. The cancer cells had spread throughout my body, and I didn't know how far it had progressed. I smiled in the face of it, even somewhat looking forward to death. After all, on that day, I would be able to see Tony again. It had been over half a month since I last saw him, and I missed him terribly. But, surprisingly, I hadn't thought about William even once in all these days. In the past, I would always check on him, care for him meticulously. When he went on business trips, I would pack his bags, manage household affairs, and handle relationships with relatives and friends. He would socialize and drink himself into a stupor. I would change his clothes, feed him hangover soup, and as we slept in the same bed, we were worlds apart. He would still call Celine late at night to check in with her. I was busy running around, but the woman he kept close to him was always Celine. Even when he was away on business, he wouldn't answer my calls. The few times he did pick up, It was always Celine who answered. Celine had naturally become the person beside William. She would cheerfully tell me, "William's asleep. No wonder he hates you. All you do is disturb him." I would reply, "Take good care of him." Do I really need to be told? You don't actually think of yourself as his wife, do you? If you hadn't tricked him, do you really think you'd have married him? At that moment, I was speechless. Without these things, life had become much easier for me. To keep my last breath alive, I still went to the hospital, not for treatment, but just to get some medication to help me make it to Christmas. Tony loved Christmas so much. If I saw him that day, he would be happy, walking through the crowded streets. I probably looked nothing like a healthy person, even though I was wrapped in thick clothes and a scarf. My sleeves hung empty, revealing my emaciated form. After picking up the medicine, I left the hospital, and Dr. Mason, dressed in his white coat, chased after me. I turned to look at him. He walked toward me with a furrowed brow, his gaze fixed on my face. I quickly covered my face with my scarf, afraid he might see through me. After all, unless you were seriously ill, no one would lose so much weight so quickly in such a short time, especially not in a sickly way. "Rosie." Mason seemed to want to say something but then sighed instead. "Where are you going now?" I answered in a hoarse voice. "The bus station. I'll take you there." For some reason, I felt a lump in my throat and wanted to refuse. But before I could, Mason had already started walking ahead. There were always many people on this road outside the hospital, and I wasn't the only one with a terminal illness. Alone and abandoned, Mason's voice came to my ear. "After I left last time, did William misunderstand you? He used to always think there was something between you and me." I shook my head. "No, we've already divorced. When I was studying abroad, I was really surprised to hear about your marriage. When I left for overseas, he came to find me, threatened me not to leave, said that you..." Mason looked down at the two shadows on the ground, then let out a soft laugh. "Forget it. But William is really contradictory. He told me not to like you, but then only referred to you as his sister." I stopped in my tracks. When did he say that? After Celine appeared. I remembered now. Before Celine appeared, William would suddenly rush out to snatch my soda, drink from the can I had already touched, then lean in to kiss my cheek, smiling as he reminded me, "Don't drink too much cold stuff. This one's mine." But that was a long time ago. So long that I almost forgot we had such sweet memories. Our ambiguous relationship was obvious to many. At first, William didn't explain anything. I found him, trailing behind him. That evening, the setting sun stretched his figure, and under the phoenix tree, his eyes held affection. I asked him, "Why don't you explain?" He asked back, "Explain what?" In the sweltering atmosphere, William blinked, about to say something, when the driver's car arrived to take us home. Once home, William went alone to Chan's father's study and stayed there for a long time. After that, William suddenly became distant. He no longer took the initiative to have meals with me, and he wouldn't pick me up anymore. I went to find him several times, but he coldly told me, "Don't bother me." I didn't understand what had happened. I tried so hard to please him, but it was all in vain. Then Celine appeared. He no longer drank my soda, didn't kiss me, and gradually became more distant from me. When friends asked him, "Aren't you with Rosie? Why are you still involved with Celine?" he frowned, visibly upset, and said, "I only see Rosie as a sister. If it weren't for her father, she wouldn't even deserve that." No wonder. When I called him on my birthday, William suddenly became cold, warning me with a harsh tone, "Rosie, you're living here because of your father, not for any other reason. Don't go around telling people about our relationship. Before you speak, ask yourself if you deserve to." Those cold words shattered my heart. A few days later, my mother also told me not to dream of climbing higher. We were just living off the Chan family, and I had to be cautious. After that, I buried my fantasies and affections, until they almost faded away. Then my mother sent me back to William's bed. Since then, the rest of my life has been filled with regret and remorse. In front of Mason, I let go, saying, "There's nothing between William and me." Those words reached William's ears just hours later. The cold, desolate night sky hung over the dark vehicle. William stood by the car, his coat discarded, wearing only his suit, smoke curling around his fingers, surrounding him, giving him an unreal, distant presence. Nothing between us? Rosie, you did give me a child. He still knew we had a child. This must have been something Mason told him. I had no strength to investigate any further. I just smiled and said, "The child is gone. Isn't that enough to say we don't have any relationship anymore?" William was momentarily at a loss for words. The cigarette was almost burned to the end. As the tip was about to burn his fingers, he spoke in a tender tone. "Rosie, you'll have children again." "Not anymore. Tony was the only one. There won't be another." I didn't deny it, just went along with his words. "Yes, you and Celine will have many children, and all I wanted was to find a quiet place to spend the last few days of my life." "And you?" William asked me, with a mocking tone. "Will you have children with Mason?" My mind went blank, and I didn't even notice the still in his words. I was only focused on escaping from this painful man. I wished we would never meet again, as every encounter reminded me of Tony. Even my tone took on a decisive edge. "Let's leave it at that." I turned to leave, but William got angry, grabbing my arm with force. His cold face flickered with emotion. "Have you forgotten? You're still my wife." "Not for much longer." The wind rushed down my throat, bringing with it a bitter, metallic taste. William looked at me intently, as if trying to discern whether my words were true or not. After a moment, he found his answer. "Rosie, your way of scaring people is as stupid as ever. You think you can live without me?" Was it a threat? No one would use their own life to scare him. And besides, with or without him, it seemed like I couldn't survive. This time, it seemed like William was trying to force me to come back. He hadn't divided the assets from the divorce. He was determined to make things difficult for me. Even taking back the house I was living in, I was left homeless while he married someone else. No one could remarry within a month of their child's death. But William did just that. The news of his marriage to Celine reached me through many mouths. How joyous it was. How angry Chan's father was. How happy the people in the Chan family were. And how much gossip they shared behind closed doors. I knew it all. But now, it all sounded like a joke to me. I was no longer part of that joke. So why would I care? When Celine called, I was swallowing down medicine with warm water. The bitterness flowed through me, a heavy, unbearable taste that surged through my insides, threatening to make me vomit. "Rosie, I'm about to marry William. The wedding is at the end of next month. What did that have to do with me?" "Forget it." I didn't waste a single word. I simply said, "Congratulations," and hung up. I continued taking the medicine, but little did I know, when Celine made that call, William was right beside her, looking disheveled and far from the image of a groom-to-be. It was likely in that moment he realized I wasn't pretending. I really was divorcing him, and I really didn't have feelings for him anymore. With no place to stay, I was like a stray dog. When William called, he must have been mocking me. I stood at the entrance of the bus station, holding my luggage, looking out at the bustling crowd. His voice, as if from a dream, echoed in my ears. "Rosie, I'm giving you one more chance. Will you come back?" My eyes were slightly misty, dry, but he was still soft-hearted. Perhaps it was the lingering affection that made him ask me to come back. But why didn't he show that compassion for Tony when he was alive? It was too late. No one needed that kind of pleading anymore. I clutched Tony's teddy bear in my hand, still faintly smelling of baby powder, still holding a trace of his warmth. When my fingers touched it, it felt like touching Tony's soul. "William, I'm never coming back. Never again." I looked down at the bear's eyes, as if gazing into Tony's soul, unable to stop my trembling voice. "I'm sorry for the past. I apologize to you. And on behalf of my mother, I apologize. Actually, I decided to divorce you 2 years ago, but Uncle Chan promised my mother he would take care of me. He disagreed. That's what delayed you and Celine. I'm truly sorry." I ended the call. Just before getting on the bus, I received a text from Mason. "Rosie, you're in the late stages of stomach cancer. Why aren't you coming to get treatment?" Chapter 6. Mason found me at the seaside. This was Tony's wish while he was alive. I had made a list, hoping to fulfill it within the limited time. The first item, spend his birthday with his father. I crossed it out. The second item, go to the beach as a family. After the divorce, I was the only one left as Tony's family. This wish, at least, was fulfilled. Standing by the sea, the sand soft and damp, the waves gently lapping at my feet, the vast blue ocean became tainted with my tears. I wanted to make up for it, but the crying became uncontrollable. If Tony were still here, I promised I'd bring him here. How wonderful would that be? At least he wouldn't have passed away with so many regrets. But at that time, I always wanted our family together. William could never be absent. Yet in the end, I was the only one standing by the sea. The wind and sand made every part of my body ache. And on the way back to the hotel, I was holding on. But when I reached the door of my room, Mason appeared like a phantom. His figure overlapped with mine, anger still evident in his eyes. As a doctor, his professional restraint was evident. Rosie, do you know what you're doing? You're looking for death. A patient who refuses treatment and travels this far, wasn't that essentially looking for death? I didn't have time to take the painkillers before I fainted. Fortunately, when I fainted, a doctor was by my side. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to fulfill Tony's third wish. Dr. Mason wanted to take me to the hospital, but by this point, going to the hospital would only be a waste of money. I had very little money left now. The previous medical fees had all been covered by Mason. His family wasn't wealthy. Back when we were in school, he always wore the same white shirt, its collar and cuffs frayed and faded from washing. Under the sunlight, you could see the fuzz on the fabric. His life was far from the wealth William enjoyed. Mason's life was tight and frugal. It was because of this frugality that I wanted to repay him. The man I had loved for 10 years was no longer by my side, and the one who saved me and covered my hospital fees was Mason. I asked him, "Why are you being so kind to me?" No one had been this kind to me in a long time. Mason didn't say anything. He just took a clean scarf and put it around my neck, then said, "You were really good to me back then." Really? I couldn't remember at all. It seemed that when you reached this point of illness, your memory started to fade. At that time, all you saw was William. Of course, you wouldn't remember someone like me. Somehow, I could sense the bitterness in his tone. Mason knew how to save people. He handed me the medicine, looked at my sickly appearance, and said earnestly, "Painkillers won't save you. In your condition, it's best to start chemotherapy as soon as possible." Will chemotherapy save me? It would only make me suffer more, make my departure even uglier. I didn't want that. I wanted to leave this world gracefully, so Tony would recognize me. I didn't want to scare him. Mason's silence was the answer. He was a doctor, but when it came to cancer, no doctor could guarantee the length of a patient's life. I held the cup of warm water, feeling a strange sense of acceptance. Dr. Mason, since you've come, could you do me a favor? Mason turned his face away, but I still saw the glimmer of tears in his eyes. If it's about settling my affairs after I'm gone, I won't help. It's not that. I wouldn't ask someone as clean as him to be involved in such grim matters. Could you help me take a photo and burn it for me after I'm gone? Behind the terrace of the seaside restaurant was a vast and magnificent view of the ocean. I stood there, having changed into clean clothes, but my fragile body didn't allow me to stand in the wind for too long. Mason helped me take a photo, with the sea in the background. This photo was for Tony. I wanted to show him that his wish had been fulfilled, that his mother had helped him accomplish it. Leaning against the terrace railing, I managed my first genuine smile in days. Mason worked hard to take a beautiful picture for me. He wanted to make me look good, but no matter how hard he tried, a patient couldn't look beautiful. As I tried to force a smile, wanting to leave behind the best photo, someone suddenly appeared behind Mason and snatched the phone from his hands. He lowered his head and scrolled through the photos. Every single one was taken at the seaside, with Mason as the photographer. The beautiful atmosphere shattered. My photos were all deleted, one by one, in the surreal play of light and shadows. I saw William gripping the phone tightly, his fingertips turning white, his jaw clenched. His gaze was like one directed at a pair of adulterers. "Rosie, how long have I been looking for you? Have you been with him this whole time? Mason took a step forward, probably trying to explain my condition. I stopped him, holding onto his arm to support myself. I haven't congratulated you yet. Happy wedding. I looked back. I called out to Celine, who was standing by the door. Miss Celine? 4 of us sat at the same table, a scene that hadn't happened since our school days. All these years, Celine hadn't changed at all. She was still the one who talked the most at the table. She even served me food without a hint of irony at how absurd the situation was. Rosie, it's only been a few days. How did you lose so much weight? It wasn't just that I was thinner. My lips had lost all color, too. When she said this, William looked over, his gaze seeming pained. But perhaps it was just my imagination. How could he feel pain for me? Mr. Mason is taking care of you like this? What did Mason have to do with this? To me, he was just an old classmate, a doctor. He left his work to find me, encouraged me to go back for chemotherapy, and stayed with me for 2 days. I was already very grateful to him. What right did William have to criticize him? How he takes care of me is none of your business, I said. It was the first time I had put William in such an awkward position. Back in school, I followed him everywhere like a little tail, always tagging along. After we married, no matter how much he neglected me and Tony, I still considered him my husband. I'd wait for him until late at night, make him hangover soup, clean him up, and take care of him when he was sick. But that Rosie had died with Tony, long gone. Celine gave a dry laugh and placed her hand on William's. William, see? I told you. Rosie's fine. You were just overreacting, weren't you? William pulled his hand away. It was only then I noticed that the ring on Celine's finger was gone. The ring William was now wearing was the one from our wedding, my wedding ring. What did this mean? All these years, I was the only one who wore the ring. Just like this marriage, it had always been my one-man show. I no longer wanted to play the part. I had exited. And now, William had put the ring back on. It was too ironic. Rosie, I remember you used to love spicy food, Celine said, placing a piece of grilled lamb in my bowl. The strong, spicy smell choked me, making my throat uncomfortable. Mason pushed the plate aside. The past is the past. What you used to like, she may not like now. With stomach cancer, eating spicy food was a death sentence. Mason tried to help me out, but Celine only teased. Dr. Mason still loves to protect Rosie. I told you back then that you two were a perfect match. Looks like you've finally ended up together. I haven't congratulated you yet. Have you said enough? William's voice was tense. Shut up. The awkwardness and panic flashed across Celine's face. How could William speak to her like that? Even I was surprised. He had always been the one to pamper Celine, protecting her like she was the treasure in his heart, never saying harsh words. But now, he was frowning at her, his face cold for a mere joke. And back when we were in school, he had never hesitated to laugh along with Celine when she teased me. When I ate with Mason, Celine would suddenly show up and make teasing comments, saying vague and suggestive things. William would stand by her side, his gaze always cold as he looked at us. And then he'd softly say, talking so much over a meal, you two really make a good pair. He had said that before, but now, he wouldn't allow Celine to say it. William pushed that piece of meat toward me again. I didn't like it, but he always forced me to swallow it. I don't believe eating one bite will do anything to you. Will you be satisfied after I eat it? I picked up the chopsticks, my eyes red. I had once loved him, then lived with him out of guilt. Now, I had nothing left. He wanted to push me to my limit. Without waiting for his reply, I took the bite in front of William's shocked gaze, chewing and swallowing. Suddenly, Mason grabbed my chopsticks. Rosie, do doctors really get this dramatic? It wasn't poison. I wouldn't die from this. I just didn't want to live with William anymore. It was strange. When we were married, I longed to see him, but he wouldn't come home at night. After the divorce, he kept showing up. But now, I didn't need him anymore. Sudden pain surged in my stomach. I covered my mouth, my face turning pale. Mason stood up, his voice cracking. How could you still be Rosie's husband? She has stomach. His words suddenly cut off. I clutched his hand tightly. William was confused. Stomach what? Stomach disease. As soon as the words left my mouth, I couldn't stop coughing, covering my lips. Bending over, I coughed up blood into my palm, but it was just stomach disease. How could I be coughing up blood? After returning from the beach, William's visits became more frequent, and my health deteriorated even more. He dragged me to the hospital to see a doctor. I pulled my hand away from his. Don't bother me anymore, okay? My firm response threw William into a panic. Rosie, you never told me you had stomach disease. My throat was dry, my voice hoarse like a rusty saw cutting through rotten wood, painfully widening the distance between William and me. It's just stomach disease. You should go take care of Celine. You're not afraid I'll really marry her? William gripped my wrist tightly, his body temperature merging with mine. Without Tony, what would I want the identity of Mrs. Chan for? Right now, I only want to wish you both a house full of children. William might have many children in the future, but there would never be another Tony. He was his first child, and the debt William could never repay in this lifetime. After Tony's death, William's sorrow rarely showed, but in a blink, he stood before me once again, full of sorrow and emotion, asking with sincerity, Rosie, in your heart, is it this child that's more important, or is it me? Tony is more important. I pressed my lips together, swallowing the pain and the suffering. If it weren't for Tony, our marriage wouldn't have lasted this long. In that moment, something inside William's eyes seemed to break. I shook him off, went upstairs, and locked the door behind me. I swallowed several painkillers, but before the medicine could take effect, the cramping pain in my abdomen triggered a chain reaction in my organs. It felt as though a large hand was roaming throughout my body, clawing, torturing me, almost like slow execution. I rushed to the bathroom, vomiting uncontrollably, and caught a glimpse of a streak of red. It was blood. As I closed the window, I looked down and saw William still standing there, a statue in the evening breeze and the darkness. Exhausted, I collapsed onto the bed. I wasn't sure how much time had passed, but the phone rang again. It was William's call. He seemed drunk, unaware of what he was saying. The only thing I could clearly hear was, Rosie, I miss Tony. I hung up the phone and, gritting my teeth, added his number to the blacklist. I couldn't forgive myself. This illness was my punishment, and I accepted it willingly. But before I died, there were still 2 more of Tony's wishes left to fulfill. Chapter 7. The third wish, Dad promised he would let him have a little kitten. He said all his kindergarten classmates had one, and he wanted one too. But when William heard it, he showed a look of disgust. He told the child, "Isn't one enough for you?" He didn't want another tie between us, and I could understand that. But he had no right to speak to the child that way. I had a huge argument with him that day. He called me unreasonable and a shrew. I told him he wasn't fit to be a father. He sneered 3 times. You think I want to be this kind of father? The blood rushed to my feet in fury, and I stormed up to slap him. He pushed me down onto the shards of glass. My palm was dripping with blood, and he walked away indifferently. That day, I thought Tony had been sent to school by the driver, but it turned out he had hidden in the house. He came to me, wiped the blood off my hands, crying helplessly, his little face crumpled, wiping away his tears as he sobbed. Mom, I don't want the kitten anymore. I don't want it anymore. Tony had very few wishes growing up. I wanted to fulfill them. I still went out and bought him a kitten. It was all white, very small and soft, so obedient when held in my arms, hardly making a sound. Tony loved it, taking care of it for a few days, and named it Cleo. During those days, William didn't come home, but when he did return, he threw Cleo outside. Tony said it was fine, but I knew he was sad for a long time after. I went into a pet store, wanting to take a closer look at the kittens for Tony. The kittens varied in colors, some lazy, some lively. One kitten was using its soft, pink paws to scratch at the glass. It was all white, but there was a black patch on its ear. I recognized it immediately. That was Cleo. It had grown a bit. Its cheeks had rounded out, a little chubby. When we first got it, it was so small that Tony could hold it in both hands. The day William threw it away, Tony didn't say a word, but the next morning, his pillow was wet with tears. Seeing Cleo was like seeing Tony again. I couldn't control my excitement, tapping on the glass, causing the staff at the pet store to notice. The person rushed over to push me away. I must have looked like I had gone mad, pointing at the cat, claiming it was mine. The staff probably thought I was crazy, shoving me, trying to get me to leave. I wasn't crazy. I was just too emotional. Emotional over getting something I had lost. Tony's Cleo had been found. Did that mean I could see Tony again? But the one who came to take Cleo wasn't Tony. It was Celine. She walked over from outside the pet store, met my gaze, and then glanced at the cat. Rosie, do you like the bell? The kitten was brought out, and I watched my husband be taken away by Celine. I watched as Tony's cat lay in her arms, snuggling against her. Our Belle is so well behaved. Do you want to pet it? Belle. It wasn't called Cleo anymore, but it was still Cleo. I remembered. I suddenly reached out to grab the cat, startling Celine. She quickly stepped back. Rosie, what are you doing? Are you used to stealing things? It's Tony's cat, not yours. I was breaking down emotionally, my stomach cramping in pain, shouting loudly. Celine looked at me like I was a joke. Rosie, this was a gift from William to me. How did it become yours? Is it not enough that you've occupied him for all these years? Now you even want to steal a cat? It was William. He took Tony's cat and gave it to Celine. What right did he have? Even if he hated me, Tony was innocent. When did it start? When did everything I owned end up being given to Celine by William? It probably started on his birthday. After Celine appeared, William's gaze always followed her. She was radiant and outstanding, naturally a match for him. William would be upset on his birthday, not because of the gift, but because he didn't get hers. That day, sitting on the steps, William looked at the moon in disappointment. His youthful features were handsome, and the soft moonlight fell on his face, casting a shadow in his eyes that seemed hollow and dim. He asked me, Rosie, do you think she forgot my birthday? He was talking about Celine. I hid my own sadness, handing him the watch I had bought with money I saved from my part-time job. I smiled bitterly and said, maybe she's busy. This is for you. William took it without looking at it. The next day, he came to pick me up, and Celine was with him. I saw my watch on her wrist. After that, there were many more things, like the driver sent by Uncle Chon, who was ordered by William to pick up Celine, or when Celine needed to participate in a competition, William gave her my design drawings. And later, it was the overseas scholarship. That day, he stood in front of me, straightforward, without a hint of guilt. Rosie, Celine needs to go abroad more than you. She's very talented, and she shouldn't be held back. The same day, my mother was diagnosed with stomach cancer, and her life expectancy was short. She hoped that William would take me abroad. This was her dying wish, but Celine stole it from her. I couldn't help but sit by my mother's bedside and cry the entire night, not knowing whether I was crying for the lost opportunity to go abroad, or for my mother's impending death, or for William's heartlessness. At that time, I didn't understand my mother. I didn't know what it felt like to be a mother. How a mother sees her child's tears as a lethal weapon, so powerful that it could make my ordinary, humble mother design William's life for him. The night before William and Celine left for abroad, I slept in the same bed with him. I understood my mother's good intentions. She was afraid that if William married Celine, I wouldn't have a place in the Chon family. She was afraid that after she was gone, I would be left alone. If I had known there was something wrong with that drink, I wouldn't have drunk it. But William didn't believe me. He pinched my neck on the hotel bed, questioning me. Aren't you with Mason? Why did you climb into my bed again? I told him I didn't know. He laughed, a satisfying laugh, but his grip tightened. His words were like a sharp blade, tearing open my chest. You're just like your mother, a vampire born to suck the life out of others. Chapter 8. Those were the last few days of my mother's life. I went to see her with my face bruised and battered. I blamed her. I accused her. And I asked her with my own mouth, what was your relationship with Uncle Chon? Her face turned pale. The white mist from the oxygen mask layered in front of her, and her voice was hoarse and heavy. Who told you this? William. I cried again, tears streaming down my face. He said, if a mother can't do it, he'll settle for me as his daughter. My mother stiffened and shook her head. I sobbed. Mom, what should I do now? That was the last sentence I spoke to her, the last time I saw her. In my dream, I knelt in front of her grave, saying I was wrong. The hands that responded were soft and warm, tinged with the scent of a child. It was Tony, but in an instant, his hands grew cold, and his body stiffened. I held him, crying uncontrollably, shouting in desperation, "Is there anyone who can save my child?" No one could save him. I watched helplessly as he breathed his last in my arms. In the dream, my tears fell. Later, I learned that my mother had almost been with Uncle Chon, but then she fell ill and found out about my feelings for William. She wanted to help us, but by then, William was already with Celine. She bore the burden of the blame for me, even though she was cruel before she left. She ensured I would be well fed and clothed, with a promising future. But I disappointed her. I didn't keep the identity of Mrs. Chon. I didn't keep my child, and I ended up with the same illness as she had. The wait was too long. Back then, I waited for William to come home day after day. But this time, after just half an hour, I was already exhausted. Life seemed to be slipping away. At this pace, I wasn't sure I could even make it to Christmas. Tony loved Christmas more than anything in past years. This year's Christmas gift is Cleo. For Cleo, I didn't hesitate to come find William and ask to see him. Chapter 9. When William arrived, I was waiting downstairs in the old house. My face was as pale as paper. He walked over, furrowing his brow, and to my surprise, there was a trace of tenderness in his voice. "Why aren't you resting in your room? Your face looks awful. Has your stomach problem not gotten better yet?" "What stomach problem?" "It's cancer. A cancer that can't be cured." I moved away from his hand that was reaching for my forehead. "No need. I came to ask you, did you give Cleo to Celine?" "What Cleo?" He didn't even know Tony's cat's name, yet he had given it to Celine and renamed it Belle. I couldn't laugh. I couldn't cry. I could only face it with calm. Tony's cat. That was his. William's eyes were complicated. He raised his hand and gently stroked my face, the apology in his expression impossible to ignore. "Let's go upstairs first. We can talk about the cat another time." "What do I have left for another time?" "I just want Tony's cat." My voice rose involuntarily. The anger built up and I couldn't hold back the cough. I bent over. My face flushed, coughing so hard that my vision blurred. William rubbed my back to help me breathe, but I swatted his hand away. My expression urgent. "Don't worry. I'll call right now." He pulled out his phone and glanced at the empty coffee table, dissatisfied. "Why is no one pouring water? Has everyone died?" It was so rare that he even cared whether I had water to drink. After he made the call, I waited for William's response. He walked over to me, speaking with a certain firmness. "I'll get Cleo back for you. Can you wait here for me?" Seizing the opportunity, I spoke up again. "Can you give me the part of the money that's mine from the divorce? I really need the money now." I needed to give it back to Mason. He wasn't from a wealthy family, and the money he had spent on me these past days had been too much. I had to repay him. Nothing felt better than walking away with a clear conscience. "You came here to ask me for a cat or for money?" I answered, "Both." His expression became much more complicated. He dragged his weakened body over and took out a card from the wallet on the bedside table, handing it to me. "The password is Tony's birthday." So, he remembered Tony's birthday. He remembered that date, but never showed up. I took the card from him, but he didn't let go. "I'll give you the money, but it's not part of the divorce settlement." William then became very serious. "Rosie, wait for me to come back. I'll go get Tony's cat. We'll start over. I've redecorated Tony's room. Next birthday, we'll celebrate it together. How about that?" "But I won't live to see Tony's next birthday." Why couldn't he have agreed to celebrate Tony's birthday sooner? A lot sooner? "It's too late. William is too late. This wait feels like it has lasted a lifetime." As I was tortured by illness, I gazed at the old Chon family house, remembering the first time my mother and I walked in here. William Chon was still a young man at the time. Later, we got married here, and on the night I wore my wedding dress, I realized I was waiting for nothing. Soon after, my mother passed away, and I cried in the new house that William and I shared. He found me annoying and threw me out. During the days I was pregnant with Tony, I remained immersed in sorrow, only realizing I was pregnant too late, after the time for an abortion had passed. In those months, William repeatedly urged me to terminate the pregnancy. He hated that child with all his heart. I refused. I raised Tony little by little, taking him to get his shots and medicine, dressing him warmly, soothing him to sleep. Every tear he shed broke my heart, and his smile made all my worries disappear. Tony knew his father didn't love him, nor did he love me. To make me feel loved, Tony hurt himself. He repeatedly got sick with colds and fevers, just to get William to come and visit us. But that wasn't what I wanted. All I wanted was for Tony to be well. I softly told him that I didn't want him to hurt himself. There was nothing more important than him, and lying and deceiving was wrong. But Tony wouldn't listen. He was just a child, and all he wanted was for his parents to be together. Soon, William found out, and this trick lost its effect. By the time the news of Tony's death reached his ears, he still thought it was just a joke Tony was playing on him. In this house, I met William, lost my mother, had a child, and then lost that child. Perhaps it really was the end. These memories flashed by in my mind like a fleeting moment. William came home in the early morning. He was holding a completely white kitten in his arms, gently touching the kitten's paw to my nose. "Rosie, the Cleo you wanted. I've found it for you. Is this Cleo?" I could barely see clearly. When I reached out to take the cat, I hesitated for a moment. I noticed that the color of the kitten's eyes was different. Its ears had the same markings, and its size was similar. But something felt off. It was just a feeling. "What's wrong?" William asked, letting the cat rest in his arms as he spoke to me, seemingly indifferent. "When Tony was little, I always thought having a pet might hurt him. I thought you'd be upset, so I didn't agree to let him keep one." I lowered my hand, no longer intending to hold the cat. This wasn't Cleo. Why was he trying to deceive me with a fake Cleo? If Tony knew, he would blame me. "William, at this point, you don't need to lie to me. I had waited a lifetime here." In the end, I hadn't even waited for Tony's cat. William paused for a moment. "Lie to you about what? This isn't Cleo?" I was too calm. So calm that I was certain. "Where's Cleo?" He must have gone to get it from Celine. If I looked closely, I could still see handprint marks on his face, and his collar was a bit wrinkled. They must have had a fight, and he had returned looking anxious and tired. But he still tried to comfort me with the cat. Cleo fell from the building. This happened half an hour after William made the phone call. Celine was the one who did it, but no one could punish her. I felt both pain and sorrow, but I had grown numb. "I'm leaving." "Where are you going?" William let the cat slip from his arms, freeing his hands. He looked like he was asking, but what was he asking me for? "Home." All the strength left my body. My vision went dark, and my legs gave out. The last thing I mumbled was a few words: "Find Tony." But before I could find him, I fainted right in front of William. Chapter 10. So noisy. Who is knocking on the door? Calling my name? I struggled with all my strength to stay awake, but in the haze of my thoughts, there was only faint noise, like fragmented pieces, like a man yelling, smashing things. The collar of the family doctor was being yanked. "She's my wife. She's ill. Why didn't you tell me?" I saw it. That was the Chan family's family doctor. Standing beside him was Mason, his face indifferent, and he responded to William. "She's your wife. And she's dying. Only now do you realize she has stomach cancer?" "Mr. Chan, please calm down." The family doctor tried to maintain some order. "I called you more than 2 months ago. It was you who said, with your own mouth, that Miss Rosie's condition had nothing to do with you. So, he should have known already." I exhaled slowly, the oxygen mask pressed against my face, my breath sounding like a countdown. Every breath was difficult and precious. William came over. Before I died, I saw the proud man, once so confident, bow his head before me. He wanted to reach for my hand but was afraid of hurting me. His hand hovered in the air, unsure of what to do, like a child who had broken their favorite toy, desperately trying to fix it but not knowing where to begin. A moment passed. He covered his face. Faintly, I heard his sobs echoing in the hospital room. So noisy. Can you please stay away from me? But I couldn't speak. I couldn't curse him. I don't know how much time passed. Dr. Mason came over. My eyelids fluttered, and I saw his white figure standing behind William. You're disturbing her. Get out, William shouted, his voice trembling, hoarse and cracked. He cried for a long time. His crying was starting to annoy me. I had once thought that my tears were the most. I never imagined that he would cry too. And for me, people only regret when they're about to die, Mason said, each word like a needle to the heart. All these years, did you ever care for her? She was your wife. You suspected us before, and even after you married her, you still doubted her. But did you ever think she just wanted to be your wife? I pity Rosie. I didn't expect her to get sick. Really, I didn't expect it. The hospital was filled with critically ill patients. They couldn't eat, living off pills. Coughing up blood was the least of their worries. The pain of having their hearts torn out and their blood drained was something they endured hundreds of times a day. How could William understand that? He only thought I was acting out because of Tony's death, making a fuss over nothing. He thought I would still come back. They argued by my bedside, completely unaware that I was a dying person. William gently tucked my hand under the blanket, turning his back to Mason. Aren't you a doctor? Can't you save Rosie? She doesn't want to live anymore. No one can save her. At this point, Mason was speaking the truth. William's voice was firm. Get out. The room became silent. My sense of touch felt surreal. My hand was lifted and placed on William's cheek. He kissed my palm, tears falling down his face. Why didn't you tell me you were sick? Because Tony is gone. Will you stop caring for me just because I'm ill? What should I do? You only care about that little child. Did you ever make space for me in your heart? William slapped his own face with my limp hand. It's my fault. How could I be jealous of Tony? How could I be jealous of Mason? We are the ones who are married. Rosie, you can hit me when I wake up. If you want to scold me or hit me, I'll accept it. He called my name, and I could hear him. I desperately wanted to break free from his grasp because I saw Tony waving at me. He was calling for me. He said, Mom, it's so dark here. I'm scared. I wanted to run to him, to hold him, but William's hand held me tight. Why couldn't he let go of me now? Chapter 11. A needle pierced my skin, the pain making me furrow my brows, my toes curling slightly, and it felt like every bone in my body was aching. The medicine flowed into my body, and the pain temporarily subsided. But the pain of life was something that no medicine could heal. There were people bustling by my bed, doctors, nurses, and the anxious sounds of arguing filled my ears. The vital signs on the ECG were weak, and as I neared death, I thought I saw Tony again. He was sitting on a soft patch of grass, his small body lying among the grass. He looked up, his soft little face marked with dimples, his smile curving his eyebrows. He sweetly called me Mom, and I wanted to hug him, but there were voices calling me, calling my name. The scene began to distort, and William's face appeared before me. He was calling my name, but I wanted to go with Tony. I wanted to say stop. Let me go. This was my final wish. But he didn't stop. For these past few days, he had brought in the best doctors to save my life. But no matter how good the medicine, it didn't matter to me. I had no will to live. My consciousness was following Tony in my dreams, but in reality, William was holding me tightly, not letting me go, until there was a fluctuation in the ECG. It was him who brought me back. He said he was my lifesaver, that this life of mine belonged to him, and that I should cherish it. I lay in the hospital for a week, and during this time, William never left my side. But I knew I couldn't hold on much longer. At the end of my life, I saw the last person I didn't want to see. The eve of Christmas, Celine stood by my bedside with me like this. She must have been so pleased. She was taking in my misery, watching my ugliness and illness with satisfaction. But she said, "It's karma." Then she added, "It's William's karma. All these years, he played me, used me, made me fall deeply for him, and then told me he never loved me. He even took back the cat he gave me. What right did he have?" The words echoed in my ears, piece by piece, crashing into my stagnant heart. In the end, Neither of us got what we wanted. Rosie, you must be wondering why he hated your child. Celine leaned over, her body close to my ear. As long as I was still breathing, she delivered the fatal blow. Because he thought that child was yours and Mason's. I told him. I faked the paternity test, and he believed it. She laughed a few times. Her body trembled, but tears squeezed out of the corners of her eyes. He really believed it. My chest was pounding violently, and I couldn't tell if it was anger or something else. But Celine didn't stop. Do you know, when your child died, William, the biological father, actually felt relieved. He thought that once the child was gone, he could start over with you. What he thought was a beginning, but it was actually an end. Struggling to open my heavy eyelids, I half opened my eyes and moved my fingers. The first thing I saw was William walking in, holding Celine's arm and telling her to get out. Celine screamed, "William, you deserve it. You deserve it." He deserved it, and so did I. After Celine arrived, William flew into a rage. He cursed at many people, as if he were venting his helplessness. He wanted to feed me water, but I wouldn't drink it if it was him offering. So, the nurse had to feed me. He stood by and watched. After the nurse left, he tried to wipe the corner of my mouth. I turned my face away, staring blankly out of the window at the falling snow. I opened my mouth weakly. "It's almost Christmas, isn't it?" William replied, "Yes. Tomorrow is Christmas. Shall we celebrate together?" I wanted to hold on until that day, to meet my Tony. "Rosie, I will make you better." William forcibly grabbed my hand, trying to smooth out the needle marks on it. But he couldn't. "I should have known earlier. You've lost so much weight, and your complexion looks so bad. How could I not notice you were sick?" He didn't notice, but I had told him. I had said it. That day, I had asked. "My stomach hurts all the time. What should I do if it's a terminal illness?" William had only put down his chopsticks, saying, "Then don't die here. It's too unlucky." Now, it really was a terminal illness. Did he not find it unlucky? Chapter 12. Christmas Eve is always a time of bustling celebration. The Christmas tree was beautiful, standing tall in the center of the mall, adorned with many decorations. Passers-by would stop to take photos, the colorful lights blinking and illuminating every smiling face. I sat in the car, wrapped in thick clothing, a hat covering my brows, leaving only my eyes visible. Through the car window, I watched the Christmas night unfold. It was snowing. The snowflakes were white and pure, just like Tony's eyes. He smiled, yet his eyes held a sense of loss. It was also here that day. When I sat in the car with Tony, he pointed at the Christmas tree and said it was beautiful. I looked with him, and we saw William and Celine standing under the tree, posing for a photo. My heart tightened, and I quickly covered Tony's eyes. In the thick snow, I thought I saw Tony, wearing a red sweater, sitting under the tree, touching the small bells on the tree. "Mom, this is so pretty." It was beautiful, but Tony's smile was gone, replaced by William's anxious expression. His arm was around my shoulders, pulling me into his embrace. "Rosie, I was so cold." He wanted to warm me, but he had forgotten he was an ice block himself. "Do you want to go out for a walk?" I shook my head, just taking one last look, as if to make this Christmas for Tony. The snow was still falling. My strength was fading. William seemed to feel my body temperature dropping. He began rubbing my wrists, but the bruises from all the injections were still there. "Rosie, are you cold? Can you say something to me?" His cheek was against my forehead. The familiar, clean scent still lingered, but it felt so distant, like something from a past life. All these years, the scent he left behind mostly carried Celine's fragrance. Sitting in the car, we watched the snow together. His chin rested on my hair. The car was quiet and warm. The wind and snow shut out. I was there with him, watching the snow fall. His voice was soft, drifting into my ear. "Rosie, do you remember why I never explained the situation between you and me? I should have told you. Over the years, I've had so many chances to tell you." The snow intensified. Was Tony cold over there? It didn't matter. I would see Tony soon. After all, This was Tony's last wish, to be with his mom forever. There was a layer of frost on my eyelids. I closed my eyes, realizing that when a person reaches the end, they lose their sense of hearing, and the soul seems to detach from the body. But William's voice continued. Rosie, if it weren't for my dad telling me he wanted to marry your mom, if he hadn't asked me to treat you like my sister, we shouldn't have ended up like this. Don't you think so? Rosie? Rosie, are you cold? Rosie, wait for me. I wouldn't wait for him. I wanted to be far away from him in the next life, and the one after that. I never wanted to see this person again. The voice became distant. I heard crying, someone calling my name. The light grew faint. It expanded and contracted in my vision. I was so tired. My eyelids were so heavy. I couldn't raise my hands. I wanted to hold Tony, but all I caught was a shadow. I kept chasing, running, screaming, moving towards the end. Sweat drenched my body, breath coming in gasps. But finally, I saw Tony. He was holding the snow-white Cleo. Mom, you came? This time, I finally held Tony's hand.